Imagine a conversation where the other person feels completely understood, where they lower their defenses, open up, and actually want to hear what you have to say. Now imagine that the key to that connection is not what you say, but how well you listen. In the following chapters, you will discover techniques that allow you to truly reach people on a deeper level. You'll learn how to make them feel felt, how to help them release emotional tension, and how to build trust even in the most challenging situations. By the end of this audiobook, you will understand that listening is not just hearing words, it's the doorway to influence, empathy, and meaningful connection. Introduction: The power of listening. In a world filled with noise, opinions, and endless conversation, most people are trying to be heard, but very few truly know how to listen. Yet listening is one of the most powerful tools for connecting, influencing, and understanding anyone. It's not about interrupting, correcting, or impressing, it's about creating a space where the other person feels seen, valued, and understood. When you master the art of listening, doors open naturally, defenses drop, and relationships transform. This book is your guide to discovering that secret. It teaches how to listen deeply, empathize genuinely, and respond in ways that get through to anyone, even those who seem impossible to reach. You'll learn how to handle tense conversations, navigate emotional barriers, and create connections that matter. Whether you are trying to influence a colleague, reconnect with a loved one, or simply understand someone better, the principles in this book will give you the skills to make every conversation more meaningful and impactful. Chapter 1. Who's holding you hostage? Framing the problem, when communication feels impossible. The chapter opens by describing a common and frustrating scenario. There's someone in your life you need to reach, but no matter what you try, logic, persuasion, pleading, arguing, or even anger, you can't get through. This dynamic feels like a hostage situation because you're stuck, powerless to affect change in the relationship or interaction, and held hostage by the other person's resistance, fear, apathy, stubbornness, or hostility. Goulston uses the hostage metaphor to highlight how stuck and helpless people often feel when they fail to connect with someone they care about or need cooperation from, at work, at home, or in any personal interaction. The author's credentials and unique insight. Dr. Mark Goulston introduces himself not as an academic or psychologist detached from real life, but as an ordinary husband, father, and medical doctor who discovered he had an unusual ability to reach people in even the toughest situations. He could connect with defiant executives, angry employees, struggling families, hostile spouses, and even people contemplating suicide, in ways most people couldn't. Rather than chalk his success up to luck or intelligence, Goulston studied what he did differently. What he found were simple principles and techniques that consistently helped people overcome resistance and open up. The core insight: downshift to get traction. One of the central metaphors introduced in this chapter is the idea of downshifting. Goulston compares the frustration of trying to communicate with a person who won't listen to driving uphill with slipping tires. People commonly try to persuade others by pushing harder, the equivalent of upshifting, which just creates more resistance. Instead, he argues, the way to gain traction in communication is to downshift. Stop convincing. Start listening. Ask honest questions. Mirror and reflect back what you hear. This downshift, letting the other person feel understood and truly heard, pulls them toward you, even when they are initially resistant. Introducing the persuasion cycle. Though Chapter 1 doesn't fully teach the methods, those come later, it lays out the foundation for the book's framework, the persuasion cycle. The cycle describes how people typically move from resistance all the way to buy-in and action. The steps typically go something like: 1. From resisting to listening. 2. From listening to considering. 3. From considering to being willing. 4. From willing to doing. 5. From doing to feeling glad they did. Crucially, movement through this cycle doesn't happen through force or argument, it comes through empathy and listening. Why listening, not talking, is key. A central theme introduced here, expanded in later chapters, is that listening is far more powerful than talking when you're trying to reach someone who's shut down or resistant. People don't want advice or solutions until they feel understood and safe. Simply saying the right thing without that foundation doesn't work. This chapter sets the stage for why the techniques that follow, the 9 core rules and 12 quick tools, are all built on empathy, reflection, and strategic listening, not persuasion or argument. Real-world relevance. Goulston emphasizes that the techniques in this book aren't just theoretical. He's used them with FBI agents and hostage negotiators, business leaders with hostile teams, family members in crisis, everyday relationships stuck in gridlock. And he promises that once you grasp the secret of getting through, recognizing how to move others through the persuasion cycle by listening deeply, you'll find that people who seemed unreachable can actually be reached. Chapter 2, A Little Science, How the Brain Goes from No to Yes. Chapter 2 reveals the neuroscience behind why people resist you, why they shut down, and how you can move them from no, maybe, yes. This chapter sets the biological foundation for all of the communication techniques that come later. 1. The 3 parts of the brain you must understand. Mark Goulston simplifies the brain into 3 key layers, each responsible for completely different emotional and behavioral reactions. 1. The reptilian brain, the fight, flight, freeze machine. This is the most primitive part of the brain. It reacts instantly to anything that feels like a threat. When someone feels judged, pressured, criticized, or controlled, this part activates. When the reptilian brain fires, the person shuts down and cannot listen. This is the NO part of the brain. 2. The emotional brain, the feeling first system. Also called the limbic system. It controls emotions, trust, bonding, fear, and empathy. Before people can hear logic, they must feel emotionally safe. If emotions are overloaded, the emotional brain blocks communication. This is the part of the brain that decides whether to stay closed or begin to open. 3. The thinking brain, the logical, rational mind. Also called the neocortex. This brain wants facts, reason, and clarity. But, it only activates when the emotional brain is calm. If the person is defensive or upset, the thinking brain goes offline. This is the yes part of the brain, but you can't reach it until the other 2 layers relax. 2. Why most people trigger the NO response without realizing it. Goulston explains that most communication fails because we speak directly to the thinking brain, offering solutions, logic, or advice. But the other person is listening with their emotional or survival brain. When someone feels overwhelmed, feels attacked, feels misunderstood, feels pressured, the survival brain interprets the conversation as a threat. This triggers defensiveness, shutting down, anger, resistance, withdrawal. And once the reptilian brain takes over, communication is dead on arrival. 3. The amygdala hijack, why people suddenly explode or shut down. The amygdala is the brain's alarm system. When it senses danger, even emotional danger, it hijacks the brain. This amygdala hijack causes people to lose patience, snap, panic, shut down, stop thinking logically, hear everything as criticism. You cannot reason with someone in this state. You must calm the emotional center first. 4. How the brain moves from NO yes. Goulston describes a psychological path the brain takes when shifting from resistance to openness. Step 1. From threatened safe. Before someone listens, they must feel the threat is gone. Your tone, body language, and empathy matter more than your words. Step 2. From safe understood. Once they feel safe, they need to feel you get them. This is where listening, reflecting, and acknowledging make the shift. Step 3. From understood willing. Only after they feel understood does the logical brain reopen. They are now willing to consider new ideas or solutions. Step 4, from willing engaged. Their mind is now open enough to problem solve. Step 5, from engaged committed. This is the point where you finally get a yes, and it feels natural, not forced. 5. Why listening is a biological tool. Not just a communication skill. The chapter emphasizes a crucial truth. Listening calms the emotional brain. Talking usually escalates it. When you listen deeply, the emotional brain releases tension. The survival brain stops scanning for threats. The logical brain becomes available again. Listening is not politeness. It is a biological intervention that disarms resistance. 6. Mirror neurons, how empathy opens the brain. The brain contains mirror neurons, cells that copy the emotional state of others. When you are calm, curious, and non-judgmental, their brain mirrors that state. Anxiety drops. Trust increases. Openness grows. When you show frustration or pressure, their brain copies it. Tension rises. Resistance hardens. This is why your emotional tone is more important than your words. Chapter 3, Move Yourself. The emotional hijack. Chapter 3 begins by explaining that one of the biggest obstacles in communication is not the other person, it's your own emotional reaction in stressful moments. Goulston describes the moment as the instant your brain shifts into panic, frustration, fear, or anger the second something unexpected or upsetting happens. In this state, your amygdala takes over, triggering a fight-or-flight response. Your logical mind shuts down, your heart races, and every instinct pushes you toward reacting impulsively, arguing, withdrawing, or shutting down. This emotional hijack makes it nearly impossible to listen, empathize, or respond effectively. Why you must calm yourself first. Goulston emphasizes that you cannot influence another person or reach someone who is resistant if you are trapped in your own emotional storm. Before you can move them from no to yes, you must move yourself. When your mind is overwhelmed, your communication becomes reactive rather than intentional, and the other person mirrors your tension. If you are stressed, they become stressed. If you are angry, they become defensive. Emotional control, therefore, is not just a personal tool, it is the foundation of influence. The shift from panic to calm. The chapter outlines a simple psychological process for regaining control in these intense moments. First, you interrupt the emotional surge by taking a physical pause, breathing slowly, relaxing your posture, and grounding your body. This simple act stops the emotional spiral from building momentum. Next, you consciously label what you're feeling: anger, fear, overwhelm, hurt. Naming the emotion reduces its power and shifts activity from the emotional center of your brain to the rational center. Once the emotional wave weakens, you redirect your focus away from your own discomfort and toward the other person's perspective. Asking yourself what they are feeling, what they might be afraid of, or what they need helps calm your internal state and reactivates empathy. Finally, you adopt a mindset of curiosity rather than defensiveness, allowing your brain to transition back into a problem-solving mode. The neuroscience behind the transformation. Goulston highlights how this process works biologically. When you calm yourself, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning, comes back online, restoring your ability to think clearly and listen effectively. Even more importantly, your emotional calmness triggers mirror neurons in the other person's brain, causing them to subconsciously reflect your state. This means your self-control becomes contagious. The more grounded you are, the easier it is for the other person to relax, open up, and shift from resistance to receptiveness. Chapter 4, Rewire Yourself to Listen. Why listening is a skill you must rewire. Chapter 4 explains that truly listening is not natural for most people. Our brains are wired to protect us, defend our ego, and prepare our responses while others are still talking. This makes real listening rare, yet it is the foundation of influence. The chapter teaches that to get through to people, you must rewire your mind away from defensiveness and toward openness, patience, and genuine curiosity. This mental shift transforms you from a reactive communicator to a calm, strategic listener. The brain's default setting, self-protection over connection. Mark Goulston reveals that the brain prioritizes survival. When someone challenges us, criticizes us, or simply expresses strong emotions, our fight-or-flight circuitry activates. Instead of listening, we evaluate threats, search for counterarguments, or focus on how the message affects us personally. This blocks empathy and prevents deep communication. To rewire yourself, you must first recognize when your brain is slipping into this defensive mode. Awareness is the first step toward control. Shift into the listening mindset. The chapter explains that effective listening is not passive, it is a deliberate mental posture called the listening mindset. This mindset is built on 3 internal commands. 1. Be curious, instead of reacting, become genuinely interested in what the other person feels and why. 2. Stay present, silence your inner monologue and focus entirely on the speaker's words and emotions. 3. Suspend judgment, pause your opinions, assumptions, and conclusions long enough to understand the speaker's world. When these 3 elements align, the brain moves out of self-defense and into receptive engagement. The power of hyperlistening. Hyperlistening is the advanced form of listening that Goulston promotes. It is not just hearing words, it is decoding emotions, noticing tone, and identifying what the speaker is trying but failing to express. Hyperlistening helps you catch subconscious cues, frustration, fear, hope, or pain beneath the surface. This deeper awareness allows you to respond in ways that make people feel understood and safe, which opens the door for influence. Eliminating internal distractions. One of the reasons people fail to listen is internal noise, mental predictions, emotional reactions, impatience, and assumptions. Chapter 4 emphasizes that you cannot truly listen until you quiet this internal chatter. The author recommends practicing mental stillness, pausing your thoughts and giving full focus to the speaker's emotional state. This calmness makes communication smoother and reduces conflict. The breathing reset. A simple brain rewire tool. Goulston introduces a powerful technique, the breathing reset. When you take a deep, slow breath and exhale intentionally, you quiet the amygdala and activate the rational parts of the brain. This short breathing ritual resets your nervous system, allowing you to listen with clarity instead of reactivity. It is particularly effective in emotionally charged conversations. Listening for emotion, not just content. Most people listen for information. Effective listeners, however, listen for emotion. Chapter 4 explains that emotional listening requires noticing tone of voice, pace and rhythm, hesitations, unspoken fears or frustrations, emotional shifts during the conversation. By focusing on these emotional layers, you move closer to the speaker's inner world, and they feel profoundly validated. The empathy bridge, connecting before influencing. Goulston states that empathy is the bridge between 2 minds. When people feel seen, safe, and understood, their psychological barriers drop. Only then can influence occur. To build this empathy bridge, you must listen with warmth, patience, and genuine care, responding in a way that proves you understand both their words and their feelings. Eliminate the urge to fix or advise. One of the major obstacles to listening is our instinct to fix the problem immediately. This instinct shuts down the speaker emotionally because it signals that we value solutions more than understanding. Chapter 4 encourages listeners to delay advice. First, reflect back what you heard. Let the other person feel heard, and only then offer guidance. Chapter 5, make the other person feel felt. The real secret to getting through to people. Chapter 5 introduces one of the most powerful principles in the entire book: people open up when they feel felt. This is deeper than being understood. It means the person feels that you truly grasp what they are going through emotionally, almost as if you are experiencing their feelings with them. When someone senses this connection, their defenses melt, trust rises, and communication becomes effortless. Mark Goulston explains that influence begins not with talking, but with helping the other person feel emotionally seen. Why feeling felt matters more than understanding. The author explains that most people don't seek perfect solutions, they seek emotional validation. You may intellectually understand someone, but if they don't feel understood, the connection is weak. Emotional connection triggers oxytocin, the bonding chemical that builds safety and trust. When people feel felt, they automatically shift from a defensive, fight-or-flight, state into a cooperative, open, receptive state. This is the gateway to deep influence. Step 1. Identify what the other person is feeling. The first step in helping someone feel felt is tuning into their emotional state. This requires careful attention to tone, energy, and body language, not just the words they say. Are they frustrated? Anxious? Overwhelmed? Hurt? Defensive? Goulston emphasizes that instead of assuming, you should observe and name the emotion. This shows respect and signals that you are trying to understand their emotional reality, not just the surface message. Step 2. Make a tentative guess, don't declare. Instead of saying, "You are angry," which can come across as confrontational, Goulston suggests using softer, gentler phrases like, "It seems like," "I get the sense that," "Does it feel like?" This approach avoids sounding like you're diagnosing them and instead invites them to clarify their emotions. People feel safe when their feelings are approached with humility rather than certainty. Step 3. Let them correct you. If your guess is wrong, that's good. Letting them correct you allows them to articulate their true feelings, something they may not have been able to express before. This correction creates a deeper connection because 1. They feel listened to. 2. They feel valued. 3. They feel safe enough to open up. Your willingness to be corrected shows that the conversation is about them, not about your ego. Step 4. Absorb their emotional truth. Once they express their real feelings, the next step is to fully absorb what they said without rushing to respond or defend. This pause allows the emotional reality to sink in, showing genuine empathy. Goulston emphasizes that silence is a powerful tool here. Quietly absorbing their feelings demonstrates maturity, presence, and emotional grounding. Step 5. Reflect their emotion back. After you've truly absorbed what they're feeling, respond with a calm, sincere acknowledgement. This can sound like, "I can understand why that would make you feel that way. Anyone in your situation would feel the same. That sounds incredibly difficult." This reflection is not agreement, it is emotional validation. It tells them you feel their experience instead of analyzing it. Step 6. The "Me Too" moment. Goulston introduces the idea of the "Me Too" moment, not by talking about yourself, but by creating a feeling of shared humanity. The goal is for the other person to think, "Wow, you really get it." When they reach this emotional realization, they shift into relief, trust, and connection. This moment disarms defensiveness and lays the groundwork for influence, problem-solving, and cooperation. Avoiding the common mistakes that block connection. Chapter 5 warns against habits that block others from feeling felt, such as interrupting, giving advice too early, minimizing their emotions, changing the topic, trying to fix the problem, talking about yourself. These behaviors make people feel invisible or dismissed. The solution is staying fully present and resisting the urge to take control of the conversation. The Felt Formula, a step-by-step tool. Goulston provides a practical formula to use during emotional conversations. 1. Ask them to talk. 2. Listen without interruption. 3. Identify what they might be feeling. 4. Make a tentative emotional guess. 5. Let them correct you. 6. Validate their feelings. 7. reflect back their emotional experience. This simple formula creates powerful emotional alignment and immediately strengthens trust. Chapter 6: Be more interested than interesting. The power of shifting the spotlight. Chapter 6 explains one of the most counterintuitive secrets to powerful communication: stop trying to be impressive, and instead become genuinely interested in the other person. Most people spend conversations trying to appear smart, knowledgeable, or entertaining. But Goulston emphasizes that influence grows not from showcasing yourself, but from making others feel valued, heard, and important. When you shift the spotlight away from yourself, people naturally gravitate toward you. Why people crave listeners, not performers. Mark Goulston explains that today's world is filled with noise. Everyone talks, promotes, boasts, and tries to stand out. But in this constant competition for attention, what people need most is someone who actually listens. Being interesting satisfies your ego. Being interested satisfies their humanity. When someone feels that you care about their thoughts and feelings, their brain releases oxytocin, boosting trust and connection. That's why being interested is far more powerful and memorable than any attempt to be impressive. The ego trap: how being interesting pushes people away. Trying too hard to be impressive often backfires. It can make you appear self-centered, insecure, or disconnected. Goulston describes this as the ego trap, a cycle where you keep trying to say more, perform more, and shine more, while the other person slowly disengages. People withdraw because your focus isn't on them. It's on your image. Chapter 6 teaches that the key to breaking this cycle is shifting your intention: stop broadcasting and start receiving. The listening switch, from performance to curiosity. The heart of this chapter is activating what Goulston calls the listening switch. This mental switch turns conversations from self-promotion into genuine curiosity. Instead of thinking, "How can I impress them?" you ask, "What can I learn about them?" This shift transforms your energy, facial expressions, tone, and presence. People feel the difference immediately. Curiosity makes you magnetic, because true attention is rare. Use the "tell me more" mindset. Goulston introduces a simple but powerful mindset: tell me more. Whenever someone speaks, you encourage them with, "Really? What happened next? That's interesting, tell me more about that. How did that make you feel?" This encourages deeper sharing and turns a surface-level interaction into a meaningful connection. The goal is not interrogation, but gentle exploration. Listen for the gems beneath the words. When you are genuinely interested, you begin to hear what other people often miss: hidden emotions, subtle concerns, unmet needs, or untold stories. Goulston calls these moments gems. These gems appear when someone reveals a piece of their vulnerability, passion, or struggle. Responding thoughtfully to these small moments instantly deepens connection. Most people overlook them because they're too busy preparing what to say next. Being interested helps you catch what others miss. Ask thoughtful, open questions. Chapter 6 emphasizes using open-ended questions that invite reflection instead of short answers. These questions show that you value the speaker's mind, not just their information. Examples include: what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? What part of that matters most to you? What would make things easier for you? These questions unlock deeper emotions and build trust rapidly. Slow down, don't rush the conversation. Being interested means slowing your internal pace. When you rush, you signal impatience. When you slow down, you communicate that the other person matters. Goulston explains that a calmer presence helps people relax, open up, and feel safe. With a slower pace, you become more attentive, more empathetic, and more aware of emotional cues. Show genuine reactions to what they share. Another important element is reacting naturally to what the other person says: surprise, empathy, concern, amusement, curiosity. These sincere micro-reactions create human warmth. People feel connected when they sense you are emotionally present, not performing or pretending. Authentic reactions show that you're not just hearing them. You're experiencing the conversation with them. Resist the urge to one-up or compare. Chapter 6 warns about the common habit of one-upping, where someone shares something, and you immediately respond with your own story. This shifts attention back to you and makes the speaker feel dismissed. Being interested requires resisting that urge. Instead of responding with your story, respond with more curiosity about theirs. Chapter 7, Make people feel valuable. The deepest human need, to feel important. Chapter 7 explains that one of the strongest human desires is to feel valued. Every person, regardless of age, culture, or status, wants to feel like their existence matters. When you make someone feel valuable, you unlock a powerful psychological door. They become more open, more vulnerable, and more willing to trust you. Mark Goulston argues that this emotional validation is not a technique, but a way of genuinely honoring another person's humanity. When you meet this need, you gain influence not by force, but through respect. Why people rarely feel truly valued. Goulston highlights that in modern communication, people often feel ignored, overlooked, or taken for granted. In workplaces, families, and relationships, emotional appreciation is scarce because everyone is busy proving themselves rather than appreciating others. This lack of acknowledgement creates insecurity and emotional hunger. When someone takes the time to genuinely express value, it stands out, because it is rare. The chapter emphasizes that making others feel valuable isn't about flattery, but about seeing their worth with sincerity. Understanding the value gap. The value gap is the emotional distance between how valuable a person truly is and how valued they feel. Most people contribute far more than they are ever acknowledged for. This gap creates frustration, loneliness, and disengagement. Chapter 7 teaches that the key to reaching people deeply is closing this gap by helping them feel seen, appreciated, and significant. The power of strategic praise, genuine, specific, and personal. Goulston explains that shallow praise, good job, nice work, means little. True influence comes from strategic, thoughtful acknowledgement, which must be specific, mention exact behaviors or qualities. Sincere, free from flattery or hidden motives. Personal, focused on the person's character, not just their results. Example. Instead of, great presentation, say, I admire the effort and clarity you put into that presentation. Your calm delivery made complex ideas easy to understand. This kind of praise activates the emotional brain, making people feel validated on a deeper level. Spotlight the person, not the outcome. Chapter 7 emphasizes praising qualities, not just achievements. Outcomes fade quickly, but character-based praise touches something lasting within a person. You might highlight their perseverance, creativity, patience, integrity, or compassion. By doing this, you show that you see something meaningful in them, not just what they produce. Goulston explains that this strengthens confidence and fosters loyalty, because people feel valued for who they are rather than what they do. The power thank you, a tool for making people feel important. One of the chapter's core techniques is the power thank you, a structured way to express gratitude that leaves a deep emotional impact. It has 3 parts. 1. Thank them for a specific action. 2. Acknowledge the personal effort or sacrifice behind it. 3. Describe the positive impact it had on you. This simple formula hits the emotional brain directly. It makes people feel significant, appreciated, and influential. Goulston notes that this type of thank you often affects people more than expensive gifts because it speaks to their emotional core. Ask for their opinion, and mean it. Another powerful strategy is asking someone for their perspective or advice. When you sincerely seek someone's insight, you signal that their thoughts have weight and value. This works especially well with people who feel overlooked. Asking them questions such as, "What's your take on this? I really respect your judgment, what would you do?" What am I missing here? Gives them a sense of importance and reinforces their self-worth. Show that you notice what others overlook. People feel valued when you notice small, often ignored aspects of their effort or personality. It might be their consistency, kindness, dedication, or quiet contributions. Goulston argues that when you highlight something others never acknowledge, you create a moment of emotional recognition they will remember for years. You are not just praising, they feel seen. Giving value without agenda. The chapter stresses that making someone feel valuable should not be manipulative. People quickly sense when appreciation is being used as a tactic. True connection comes from appreciation without expectation. When you give value without needing anything in return, you earn genuine trust, respect, and emotional safety. This kind of emotional gift has long-lasting effects on relationships. How feeling valuable changes behavior. Goulston explains that when people feel valued, they listen more. They cooperate more. They become less defensive. They show more loyalty. They perform better. They communicate more openly. Feeling valuable activates the higher brain, which encourages connection, empathy, and reason. You're not just influencing their mind, you're uplifting their spirit. Chapter 8, Help people to exhale emotionally and mentally. Why people need to exhale. Chapter 8 introduces a crucial principle: before you can truly reach someone, before they can listen, understand, or cooperate, they must first exhale emotionally and mentally. This means letting go of tension, fear, frustration, and mental overload. Most people walk around carrying stress like a tightened fist, unable to think clearly or communicate effectively. Goulston explains that your goal is to help them release this emotional pressure. When you help someone exhale, you instantly become a safe space, and their defenses fall away. The emotional pressure cooker. Goulston uses the metaphor of a pressure cooker to describe how people accumulate emotional stress. They hold in worries, anger, anxiety, shame, confusion, fear of consequences, feeling overwhelmed. When this pressure builds, they can't listen or reason. Their brain switches into a survival mode driven by the amygdala, making them defensive, reactive, or shut down. Your role is to open a tiny valve that lets the steam out, creating a safe emotional space. Before someone can exhale, they must feel that you are safe, non-judgmental, and patient. This requires a calm tone, an open posture, quiet presence, zero interruptions, no rush, no attempts to fix immediately. Goulston emphasizes that people exhale naturally when they sense you are giving them emotional permission to let their guard down. Your calmness becomes contagious. The power of letting them vent. One of the most effective ways to help someone exhale is to let them vent without interruption. Venting is the emotional equivalent of releasing compressed air. It clears space inside the mind. However, this does not mean encouraging negativity. It means allowing them to express the emotions that are blocking communication. When they talk, you simply hold the emotional space. You do not argue, defend, or correct. You let the storm pass. Validate before you advise. Goulston explains that validation is the key to helping people emotionally exhale. If you jump straight to telling them what to do, they tighten up again. But if you validate their feelings, I can understand why you'd feel that way, they feel safe enough to release more pressure. Validation is not agreement. It's acknowledgement. Once someone feels acknowledged, their emotional breathing becomes steady again. Naming the emotion helps release it. The chapter explains that humans exhale emotionally when they feel someone understands their emotional state. Naming the emotion can accelerate this release. It sounds like you're overwhelmed. It seems like you're frustrated. You look really exhausted by this. This naming effect regulates the emotional brain. The moment a person feels named, they experience instant relief, because someone understands what they couldn't put into words themselves. Use softening phrases that invite openness. Goulston recommends gentle, softening phrases that encourage emotional exhalation, such as, "Tell me what's weighing on you. What's the part that's hardest right now? I'm here, just let it out. You don't have to hold it in." These statements reduce fear and give people permission to be honest. Give them the gift of silence. Silence may be uncomfortable for some, but it is one of the most powerful tools in this chapter. When you remain quiet, the other person feels there is space for them to express their pain. Silence allows reflection, emotional release, honesty, deeper communication. People often reveal their most important thoughts after a meaningful pause. The emotional timeout technique. Goulston introduces an approach where you help someone step back from their emotional overwhelm by giving them a moment to breathe, not literally, but emotionally. This involves slowing the conversation down and saying something like, "Let's take a moment. I want to understand what's really going on with you." This emotional timeout resets their nervous system and brings their thinking brain back online. Help them feel that their feelings are manageable. People get emotionally stuck when they feel their emotions are too big to handle. When you listen calmly and respond with empathy, you signal that their feelings are not dangerous, embarrassing, or overwhelming. This gives them permission to relax. Once their emotional intensity drops, their logical thinking returns, making meaningful communication possible. Why exhalation opens the door to influence. After someone has emotionally exhaled, several things happen. Their defensiveness drops. Their brain returns to rational mode. They become more receptive. They finally listen. They trust you more. They are willing to consider new ideas. Helping someone calm their mind creates the perfect environment for cooperation, problem-solving, and influence. You cannot persuade a person who is emotionally drowning, but once they exhale, they can hear you. Chapter 9, Check your dissonance at the door. What is dissonance and why it blocks communication? Chapter 9 introduces the concept of cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort we experience when our beliefs, opinions, or emotions conflict with those of others. Goulston explains that most people enter conversations carrying their own judgments, biases, or assumptions. This internal dissonance makes it difficult to truly connect or influence others because you are mentally defending your perspective rather than listening. The key principle of this chapter is that to get through to someone, you must first check your dissonance at the door, put aside your judgment, ego, and need to be right in order to be fully present. How dissonance manifests in conversations. Dissonance shows up as internal arguments with yourself, skepticism or doubt about the other person's perspective, emotional resistance, quick judgments or assumptions. When you hold on to these mental conflicts, you unconsciously create tension in your voice, body language, and facial expressions. The other person senses it, and it triggers defensiveness or withdrawal. Your goal is to release this tension and enter the conversation with neutrality and openness. The impact of ego on communication. Goulston emphasizes that ego is often the source of dissonance. People want to appear knowledgeable, smart, or morally right, which creates a barrier to true listening. The more you cling to your ego, the less receptive you become, and the less the other person trusts you. Checking your dissonance requires humility, recognizing that the conversation is about the other person, not about defending yourself. Techniques to release internal dissonance. The chapter offers practical strategies to achieve this mental state. 1. Pause and breathe. Take a moment to calm your thoughts before responding. 2. Label your own feelings. Identify what judgments or emotions are arising internally, e.g., I feel defensive, or I disagree but I can listen. 3. Focus on curiosity. Replace the need to be right with genuine curiosity about the other person's perspective. 4. Adopt a neutral posture. Keep your body language, tone, and expressions open to avoid transmitting resistance. These steps help you rewire your brain to focus entirely on understanding, rather than defending. Listening without judgment. Checking your dissonance allows you to listen without judgment, which is central to effective influence. People instinctively pick up on subtle signals of doubt or criticism. When you remove these signals, the other person feels safe to share openly. Goulston points out that this safety is the gateway to emotional connection, trust, and eventual persuasion. The power of empathetic presence. When you check your dissonance, you create a presence that communicates, "I am here for you, not for my agenda." This empathetic presence allows the other person to lower their defenses and engage in a meaningful conversation. Your calm, neutral attention becomes magnetic, encouraging openness and honesty. Why this step is crucial before offering solutions. Chapter 9 emphasizes that no advice, insight, or persuasion will land if the other person senses dissonance from you. They will resist, argue, or disengage. By checking your dissonance, you clear the emotional and cognitive pathway, enabling your words to be heard and considered. Influence starts with creating internal alignment in yourself first. Chapter 10, When all seems lost, bare your neck. The moment of maximum influence. Chapter 10 explores one of the most powerful techniques in difficult conversations, showing vulnerability at the right moment, or baring your neck. Goulston explains that when all seems lost, when someone is defensive, hostile, or shutting down completely, your most effective tool is empathy expressed through courageous openness. Instead of escalating conflict or retreating, you voluntarily lower your guard. This act of vulnerability creates a moment of human connection that can reset the dynamic entirely. Understanding the dynamics of high-stakes resistance. Goulston emphasizes that people often become most resistant when they feel threatened, unheard, or cornered. In these moments, rational thinking shuts down, and emotional barriers rise. Attempts to argue, persuade, or rationalize usually fail. The chapter teaches that in high-stakes resistance, influence comes not from control but from humble emotional exposure, signaling that you are safe, relatable, and trustworthy. What it means to bare your neck. Baring your neck is a metaphor for showing vulnerability without fear of judgment. It involves sharing your own feelings, fears, or uncertainties in a calm and honest manner. For example, you might say, "I may be wrong, but I really want to understand your perspective. I feel frustrated too, and I want to find a way forward." This disarms tension because it demonstrates that you are human, not threatening, and that you prioritize understanding over ego or winning. The science behind vulnerability. The chapter highlights that human brains are wired to respond to vulnerability with empathy. When someone sees you lower your defenses, their amygdala activity decreases, and their prefrontal cortex becomes more receptive. This neurological effect opens the door for dialogue, collaboration, and influence. People feel safe to drop their own defenses when you model that safety through emotional courage. How to use this technique effectively. Goulston provides guidance for applying this technique strategically. 1. Assess the situation. Only bare your neck when defenses are high and traditional approaches fail. 2. Keep it genuine. Insincerity or forced vulnerability will backfire. 3. Stay calm and centered. Vulnerability works because it conveys emotional stability, not panic or desperation. 4. Focus on connection, not resolution. The initial goal is to create openness, not to solve the problem immediately. This approach ensures that vulnerability becomes a bridge rather than a liability. Examples of baring your neck in action. The chapter shares real-world examples where leaders, negotiators, or everyday people faced seemingly impossible communication challenges. By expressing humility, admitting uncertainty, or acknowledging emotions honestly, they were able to diffuse anger, gain trust, reopen dialogue, transform hostility into cooperation. Goulston stresses that these moments often produce breakthroughs that logic or persuasion alone could never achieve. Why vulnerability leads to influence. Baring your neck works because it triggers reciprocity of trust. When you show courage and openness, the other person often mirrors it, lowering their defenses and engaging in more authentic communication. The chapter underscores that influence is not about power or authority, it is about creating an emotional environment where the other person feels safe to listen and respond. Chapter 11, Steer clear of toxic people. The danger of toxic people. Chapter 11 focuses on the importance of recognizing and managing interactions with toxic individuals. Goulston explains that some people drain energy, trigger emotional reactions, and create unnecessary conflict. These toxic interactions can sabotage your ability to listen, connect, and influence. The chapter emphasizes that protecting your emotional and mental space is critical, because you cannot reach anyone effectively if you are being pulled into negativity, manipulation, or drama. Identifying toxic behavior. The chapter outlines common signs of toxic behavior, including constant criticism or judgment, manipulation or deceit, negativity and pessimism, refusal to take responsibility, emotional volatility or volatility-inducing behavior. Goulston emphasizes that toxic people often seek to provoke reactions, exploit vulnerabilities, or dominate conversations. Recognizing these behaviors early allows you to respond strategically rather than react impulsively. The cost of engaging with toxic people. Engaging with toxic individuals without boundaries can have serious consequences. Increased stress and anxiety. Reduced focus and productivity. Emotional burnout. Damage to other relationships. Impaired decision-making. Goulston notes that trying to influence a toxic person often backfires because their defensive or manipulative patterns block connection. Wasting energy on them diminishes your ability to communicate effectively with those who are receptive. Strategies for steer clear. The chapter provides practical strategies for minimizing the impact of toxic people. 1. Set emotional boundaries, protect your feelings by limiting engagement or interaction. 2. Control your reactions, avoid being drawn into arguments, blame, or manipulation. 3. Limit exposure, reduce time spent with toxic individuals whenever possible. 4. Redirect conversations, steer dialogue away from negativity toward neutral or productive topics. 5. Detach without disengaging, you can maintain professionalism or courtesy without sacrificing your mental peace. These strategies allow you to remain calm and centered while protecting your capacity for meaningful connections elsewhere. The importance of emotional self-preservation. Goulston stresses that avoiding toxic people is not about avoidance for its own sake, it is about preserving emotional energy. To truly influence, listen, and connect, your emotional and mental state must be stable. Toxic interactions deplete that stability, making you more reactive, defensive, or distracted. Maintaining self-preservation ensures you remain effective in your communication with others. When confrontation is necessary. The chapter also addresses situations where direct confrontation may be required. Goulston advises that if you must confront a toxic person, approach calmly and assertively. Focus on facts and observable behavior. Avoid attacking character. Stay emotionally centered. The goal is not to win, but to neutralize toxicity and protect your own well-being. Conclusion. As we reach the end of Just Listen, the central truth becomes clear: influence, connection, and trust are not built through talking, convincing, or asserting authority, they are built through listening deeply, empathetically, and without judgment. Every person you meet carries an inner world of thoughts, fears, and emotions, and most of the time, they simply want to be heard and understood. By giving them that space, by acknowledging their feelings, by making them feel felt and valued, you lower their defenses and open the door to authentic communication. Listening is not passive, it is active, deliberate, and often courageous. It requires setting aside your ego, suspending your need to be right, and entering conversations with curiosity and openness. It asks you to regulate your own emotions, create safety, and even show vulnerability at the right moments. It challenges you to help others release tension, exhale mentally and emotionally, and feel significant in a world that often overlooks them. The techniques in this book, from understanding emotional neuroscience to practicing genuine empathy, from asking thoughtful questions to steering clear of toxicity, are all tools for transforming ordinary interactions into meaningful connections. They remind us that people respond not to arguments or logic first, but to the emotional resonance we create. When you master the art of listening, you do more than communicate, you touch hearts, inspire trust, and influence lives. So, as you step back into your daily interactions, remember, your greatest power is not what you say, but how well you listen. Approach each conversation with presence, curiosity, and compassion, and you will discover the extraordinary effect of truly being heard. Listening is not just a skill. It is a gateway to connection, influence, and human understanding that lasts a lifetime.